Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. I'm also happy to have this guest on. She's my Australian friend, Alison Vidotto. Alison is the CEO of Vidotto Group and Push Training. She's a business mentor and a strategist, a professional speaker, and a published author. She's also the founder of the Australian Children of Vietnam and the mother of 6. How do you do all of that, Alison? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sharon. Great to be here. Thank you. I do it the same as everyone else. You know, I juggle and
One thing at a time.
Yes, that's right. And, you know, I do it, but it's not always perfect. So,
Well, yeah, imperfect actions, right? So let's start out. Have you tell everyone a little bit about how you got started? I know you came from an educational background. So how did you end up as CEO of your businesses?
So what actually happened was my husband and I set up our business, quite a long time ago, 25 plus years. And I was actually a naturopath, a nutritionist, and I taught adults in the sciences, anatomy, physiology, nutrition, all that sort of thing. And my husband consulted as an engineer. So we had this consulting firm. And we did that for many years, and my business grew, my arm and his arm grew. And then in 2010, the mining and resources side of the business just had absolute explosive growth. And I'd always done our books and, you know, all the administration and everything. But suddenly it was this, you know, it was a really good sized business with a lot of staff and contractors. And so I left my teaching job, which I really loved, to take over the running of the business because we had a huge office and that we refurbed and ended up underwater, I might add.
That's so interesting. I know that you've been through, we're in the middle of this COVID-19 now, and you've successfully led your business through a number of disasters. So you're really familiar with being in this new reality. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we have had a few. In 92, we had a recession here, and we were very, very, very affected by it, you know, to the point that we thought we might lose our house. And we ended up living in the US as a result of that. That was sort of, you know, the break we got. But it was a really tough time. And my husband had taken a huge pay cut, you know, like more than half. It was really difficult. And then in 2010, I mentioned we had this explosive growth, and we hired or leased a very big office right in town, a huge amount of expenses, and we had lots of contractors, and we refurbed everything. And then our city was underwater, and our office was literally across the road from the river that burst its banks. So it was more than a meter or more than a yard, as you guys would say, underwater. And it's awful when cities flood, the water really stinks.
Yes.
You know, there's all sorts of terrible things in it. So that was awful. You know, that was another real challenge. And of course, we couldn't access anything. And so that was really difficult. And so we'd had a few, and of course, there was the GFC. But it all paled, I think, to what happened in 2014-15, which was the downturn in the mining and resources industry. And honestly, for us, that was almost catastrophic. We very nearly lost everything, the house, everything. We lost 80% of our contracts within weeks. You know, it was really, really difficult. And for that one, it took a huge amount of strategy to turn it around. You know, there were such huge lessons there.
For people, there are so many people that are experiencing this for the first time. We had here in the U.S., 2008 when the real estate market crashed, and it was just
Mm,
horrific because we saw investors that with 100 or more properties that they just went belly up because the tenants lost their jobs, then the tenants moved in with mom and dad or a relative, and then they couldn't find tenants, and even people that were very well funded, there
yeah.
was no surviving that. It was just a tsunami of things that happened. So young people that haven't been through this before, I think
Yes.
it's hard on everybody, but it's even
Mm.
harder if this is your first rodeo.
Yes, so true. I was actually chatting. We've got a number of our adult children work with us, and they were talking about this and asking what it was like compared to other things we've been through. And I was saying to them, we had the same thing in the 90s, and interest rates were at 18%
Yes.
for borrowing a house to loan, and then the property market just fell through, absolutely through the floor. And we had a few investment properties. But I was saying to them that this time, there's all this uncertainty and what's going to happen. And of course, there's the health aspect. And, I worry about people's mental health. I was a crisis counsellor for a while, so that's a real concern. But I was saying to them, there's not the fear for us this time
Yeah.
because we have been able to navigate and to pivot and to deal with those stresses of when markets do fall, that you get some skills, I think, along the way, and you get a bit of nerve about you. I think, all those old sayings start to make sense, as you get older. And I think, um, this too shall pass.
Yes.
And it will, just like the recession passed and the GFC passed and the floods passed and, the downturn passed. This will pass. And I think, and we'll pivot. And, one of the best things I ever learned was during a crisis, you shift from growth to survival. We tend to be focused on how do we grow our business? How do we expand our business? Well, I think you turn inwards, and it's about surviving this.
That is so true. So that's a quote, shift from, uh, uh, what'd you say, shift from thrive, to say it
From
again,
growth to
from growth
survival.
to survival.
Yeah.
And that is what you have to do. I think you have to just get very focused. But
Yeah.
the problem is you tie this in, and I know you're very passionate about helping people prevent business failures, because when you look at those numbers, they are staggering even
Yeah.
without the challenges today.
Yeah.
It is amazing that I mean, a huge amount of businesses are just going to fail, and then you pile this on top of it. Many of them will not survive, but there are some steps that small business owners can take to survive this type of a crisis. So what do you
Oh, well, I think the first thing, and I look at, like I said, when we had the downturn, and, everybody was saying, that it's terrible out there. There's no projects, there's no work. And we knew a lot of small businesses that were going under because we're like a para company within the mining and resources industry. So we're in a very niche industry and everybody was going under. But I do believe that it's about, keeping focus, but also being realistic. We never lose 100% of clients out there. 100% of customers for your particular product are not going to go. So for us, one of the things I kept saying was, even if it's a 90% collapse, that still leaves 10%. Now, 10% of all mining and resources projects are still thousands and thousands. I only want 3.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were suddenly, in quite a saturated market, there was still some sort of a market there. We just needed to pivot. So what we did was, my husband's been in this industry for many decades and it's very niche. So we developed training that we would offer to those companies that did have. So we added extra value. We did that, that was a complimentary add-on to our services. So that gave us an edge. So we just looked at how we could get an edge. Now, here today, we've got this shutdown, and if you're in any way in service, people are online like never before.
Mm-hmm.
So there is still a portal to those people. It's just different, you know. So how can you operate online, or how can you operate, you know, like the number of restaurants that are now doing takeaway? They never did takeaway.
I think you said the magic word pivot. So how
Yeah.
can you take what you know and repackage it, or create a
Yeah.
new service, or take it online? That wasn't an option 20, 25 years ago. I mean, it was just beginning. We'll say it was just beginning. I got 1991, I opened a business, and somebody said something about getting an email, and I said, I'm not doing that. I have a pager, I have a home phone, I have a cell phone. I'm not doing one more thing. It's so funny when I look back on it today. But it was the beginning of people were buying domains, and they were saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. They just told me I need it. It was mycompanyname.com.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but we do have a lot more opportunity today. And I remember something you told me once. You were talking about lead magnets. So you were telling me a story about creating a lead magnet and what your best lead magnet turned out to be. Your husband?
I know which one you're talking about. So that's when we, and like we were really in dire straits. You know, we had the conversation that we're going to have to, you know, close the business, and our home is attached to the business. We employed, you know, our own children or family members, and our other staff were like family. So it was just a terrible time. And mining and resources, how do you come up with a lead magnet for that? You know, they don't read ebooks. They're not interested in your quiz. They're not on social media. You know, so I was sort of, what are we going to do? And then we're sitting there one day, and I lived and breathed this funnel that I was trying to create. So this pivot funnel. And I was sitting there one day, and we're all sitting outside, and I looked at my husband, and I'm staring at him, and he sort of, what? And I said, I've just realized you're the lead magnet. And that's what we did. We sent out emails, and the subject line was, let's have a coffee. And that was the beginning of turning things around. That was the very beginning, you know. It was just, and so I put together this whole new funnel to suit what was going on at the time. And it's the same now. We need to create a new funnel that's, you know, the COVID-19 funnel.
The COVID-19. I think, you know, I've thought about what we talked about before about your husband being the lead magnet. And I thought, what a perfect idea, though, for businesses. Once you're off, we're off the quarantine. I'm a big believer that networking is one of the most underutilized, yet one of the best marketing tools on the planet. What a brilliant idea to make yourself, or in your case, your husband, whoever is the person that they want to talk to, make them the lead magnet. It's brilliant.
Yes, and now of course it's we're getting the lead magnets. You know, it took me a while to get the lead magnet into the coffee shops. Now I'm trying to get him into Zoom, but it's working.
Oh my!
So he's pivoting again.
Oh, that is so funny. I'm going to forever remember that story. And one day when I meet your husband, that's what I'm going to think about.
Yes, you'll be able to. Here's the lead magnet. Yes, but it worked. It completely worked, and you know, it took me months, and so we were in that real survival mode for a long time. We just had to hang on. You know, it's what's the saying? The name of the game is to stay in the game until you win the game. And so we were just trying to stay in the game. That's all it was about. You know, just stay in the game. And it took, and you know, he started having these coffee meetings, and slowly it started to turn things around, you know. So we built a funnel that we would put articles on LinkedIn, and then anybody that liked it or commented, we'd connect, and we had a blurb for them, a whole nurture sequence. And that all led to, by the fourth point of communication, let's have a coffee.
Wow.
And once he got in for coffee and, you know, they talked face to face, it was so much easier. But that was the, you know, that was the golden nugget, and you've just got to find the golden nugget for your business. You know, if you're struggling, if anybody's struggling now, there is a golden nugget. You've just got to find it, you know. And unfortunately, sometimes businesses do fail. But, you know, big picture, and, you know, it's very hard to look ahead when you're in the middle of it. But again, I don't think any great success story is without its failures in the early days.
Oh, I agree completely. Now, during times like this, I know it's been a problem for even seasoned investors. They lose their focus. Their time gets away from them, and they just have trouble either staying on track, or if they're off the track, getting back on the track. People in general seem distracted, or had somebody say they were discombobulated. How do people regroup and kind of get their focus back and get back on the track, so to speak?
I think, you know, it's such a huge adjustment. I like working from home. So I live rural. I'm on a bit of acreage. So I'll spend time in the office and then I'll come home to write, because I write quite a bit. My husband does not like working from home. You know, that's something for the office, and we've got other family members. So that first week, every day felt like Sunday. So we're having long breakfast and long coffees. And then by Thursday, I was sort of, we've actually done no work. We're all having a wonderful time. The dog's really happy, but we've done no work. So what we actually did was we brought in a schedule like we would at work. You know, okay, I'm going into work. We've got separate parts of the house for our office space, and I'll see you at 10:30 for a coffee. And I've got to get this finished. And look, it doesn't, a lot of days it works, and it works really well. And then also what we do, I've been using Zoom. So we have remote workers too. We've got a staff member in Japan, and we've got a couple in the Philippines, and, you know, they're all over the place. So I'll actually check in on Zoom too. And what I do find is I'm communicating more than I would in the office. So I'm actually touching base. So after lunch, I'll just touch base. And we use Zoom a lot. We've even used Facebook Messenger and just done a screen time on there, and just to touch in, okay, what are you working on? How are you going with that? And yeah, just try and bring that structure back.
I think it's not so hard for me, and not for you. We're used to working from home, but for people that have never worked from home, it's tough.
Yeah.
For me, I get up and get dressed just like I'm going to work, even if I'm going to stay home. So for me, that's important. People don't understand it. Now, one caveat, I'm probably going to have on sweatpants. You see but everything else is good. So might have to put some real pants on to go out to somewhere in a normal situation. But I have a schedule. I keep a schedule. And it's been a real challenge for me, because social media is such a part of all of our businesses. It's been a real challenge for me to manage that beast, because it's necessary, but it's also a big time suck.
Well, I do, I'm laughing because I do the same as you when I'm at home. I call it my newscaster's outfit. You know, so I'll have on the nice comfy pants and slippers, and then I'll have something really nice, you know, but for the screen. So I call it the newscaster's outfit on. But I think too, it's really important to actually give yourself a break too, because neurologically, we can only concentrate for X amount of time. So there's a thing called the Pomodoro effect. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. So that's fantastic. So you can set an amount of time. So I'll try, and it doesn't always work, but I'll try doing at least a 20-minute block, if not a 50-minute block. And then in those 10 minutes, I'll check FaceTime and Facebook and, you know, LinkedIn and emails as well. And then I'll go back. And the other thing I do, I have 2 screens. So I'll close everything off on one screen, and I have no windows at all open. It's just what I'm working on. And just be really focused, you know, and awareness. The more we become aware, the easier it gets. But, you know, we're all doing a pretty good job of a crazy situation when you really think about it. And the other thing that I do, sometimes I'm just not getting done what I wanted to get done. So I'll often go to something else on the to-do list that's a lot easier, so that at least I'm ticking something off. And that's very good for me mentally. You know, I feel like I've achieved, and then the next morning I'll tackle the thing I didn't get done.
I think that's important too. As long as sometimes you just need a mental break from the harder stuff, and if you can honestly I'm like you, I need to check something off, so I'll pick something easier, and it's okay then.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about marketing now. I'm assuming you all on quarantine in Australia like we are here, kind of
pretty much.
Yeah. So the question comes up all the time about marketing. So real estate investing is very much about marketing. You have to be getting leads in the door because there's a pipeline, and you're likely, you make, you know, put a deal together and close a house really quickly in my business, but there's usually a marketing pipeline where you contact sellers who do a lot of direct mail and things like that. So people they want to stop all their marketing efforts, and I'm telling them that's a mistake. Maybe take a slight pause, but get back to marketing, but change the message on your marketing and to reflect. I can't come look at your house today, but maybe we can do this or this. But once you dial that down, it takes a long time to get that momentum back. What do you say? What are you all doing about that?
Well, here I noticed we've actually just settled on a house the other day that we bought. One of the things they're doing now, they do some inspections by appointment only. So that's with the social distancing and all that sort of thing. And the other thing they're doing is virtual. So they're doing virtual tours of the house, and of course you know you can do that now where they've you know, they go in and do the whole thing. So there is that. But gee, I agree with you 100% on your marketing. You know, don't stop. I know with us, it's also about knowing, which you clearly do, knowing your cash flow conversion cycle. So in my arm of the business, working with small business owners, I can have somebody contact me about mentoring, and they can start the next week, and they've paid me by the end of the week. For the mining and resources side of the business, it can take months. So we know if we're not marketing in April, we're not working in August.
Exactly.
You know, so we know that today we're in lockdown, but chances are in August, that's not going to be the case.
Exactly.
And that's also why it's really important to pivot. You know, that you're maybe in your line of work, that you're actually chatting to clients and having Zoom meetings. You know, to actually talk to them about their investments. And so it's a different pathway, but it leads to the same destination.
Right.
And you've just got to pivot. But don't stop marketing.
Yeah, the other thing that I tell my students is go back through your old leads, the ones that said no to your offer, and we're going to wait out to get a better offer. If they've lost their job or their circumstances have changed, they may be a very motivated seller now. So if you don't want to spend money right this second, you want to wait a couple of weeks, then go back through your old leads and reach out to those people. Pick up the phone and say, you know, have you sold your property? Or what about the project we were talking about? You know, is it time you want to revisit that? But you can also do a lot of that. It's a great time to touch base with people by phone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing is too, some people don't like to do that because they feel it's predatory. You know, I see a lot of people saying, oh, I don't think it's a good time to be selling. I think that's all perspective, because you contacting somebody about buying their property might well be the lifeline that they're praying for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it could be the best thing that happens to them, you know, given their circumstances.
I think you hit upon something that I like to talk about. When people don't want to do whatever it is because it's hard or they just don't want to do it. And I tell people, you may have to become a different person. You may have to jump out of your comfort zone and do the hard things because that's what it might take for survival. So in a sense, you just have to do the hard stuff.
Yes, yes. And look, it does take, you know, as you know, with my book, the tagline is "The Door to Success Says Push," which was something my mother used to say to us. You know, if we complained that something was hard, "Door to Success Says Push," you know, keep going. And of course, I always said it to my children, so it's a bit of a family joke. But it's so true. You've got to be prepared to push. You really do. And of course, times like this, those businesses that will survive are the ones whose owners are going to, you know, be prepared to get out of their comfort zone and to pivot and to do what they need to do.
I love the title of your book, and I'll put that in the show notes because it's and Alison is really an expert at what she does. So you should definitely pick up her book. And your mama was a wise woman.
My mum was a very, very wise woman.
So how can people stay motivated when they're so worried, Alison? Worry tends to take over and become the dominant force in everything you think about. You move to a lack mentality, you move to a worry mentality, and it's not as easy as just telling people to snap out of it.
No, it's not, but it is worth bearing in mind that we can't have two thoughts at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not neurologically possible. So if you are starting to get into that spiral, because some people, that's all they're watching, that's all they're talking about, it's all they're thinking about, and that's not good for anybody. So there's a thing called the Stockdale paradox. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a chap, James Stockdale, and he was a prisoner of war. It's a very similar philosophy to Viktor Frankl, of, you know, As a Man Thinketh. I thought Man's Search for Meaning was his book. But basically what it is understanding the reality of the situation, but having an element of optimism in there.
I love that.
It's you get caught up in the gloom and doom, it's not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not going to help. There's only one way. It's a one-way road, and that's sort of downhill. So you get caught up in that, and that's what happened when there was the big downturn. And with my team, we actually did a thing, the growth mindset. And we had people saying to us, there's no work out there, it's everybody's closing. And in the end, I was sort of, we can't think that way. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to, you know, the mind has the thinker and the prover. So we're going to prove that, and we're going to go under. We have to believe, yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, this is a difficult situation, but yes, we are going to survive. And from there, you find the steps you need to take to make sure you do survive. And like I said, the reality of it is that people will survive it.
So focus on, instead of focusing so much on the problem, focus on a solution.
Absolutely. And look, it's, you know, we both spoke about, you know, the GFC and, you know, other major economic downturns. When they happened, they were not nearly, you know, they were not as short-lived or opportunistic as this one is. Mm-hmm. I think this one, you know, they're working on a solution. Everybody's in the same boat. You know, to different degrees. Some people are obviously struggling more, but it's going to pass for all of us. And the other thing is, you know, people are online in a way they've never been before. People are using local services in ways they haven't in decades. You know, it's interesting. Somebody contacted me and asked if I was interested in, you know, buying from a fruit co-op. We'll all put in, and, you know, they'll deliver, like one person will collect it and do all the social distancing, and we can each get a portion. Now, I was doing that 25 years ago with neighbours, and it all went by the wayside. So there's little businesses that will flourish. You know, they've obviously thought, okay, people can't come into our shop. How do we survive this? So really don't get caught up in the, you know, gloom and doom. Monitor how much you look at the news. You know, give yourself, you know, 10 minutes of a morning, 10 minutes of an evening, or whatever it is. But don't get caught up in that loop of gloom.
That's great advice. I'm interested to know about the charity you started, Australian Charity of Vietnam. How did that come about?
Well, I went on a holiday with my family. We have 6 children, so it was the first holiday in a very long time. And I'd been, you know, I went over to Vietnam. I fell in love with it. I had a couple of friends there. And then somebody asked me to go and meet this boy. He was 18. He wasn't really a boy. Way up in the hills of Hanoi, outside of Hanoi. We're walking through these rice fields, you know, in this little village, and they'd never seen a Westerner, let alone a blonde. So we were, you know, this freaky weirdo walking through. And I met this young guy, and I met his mum. And when his name was Kwan, and the mum was talking, I had an interpreter, and I said I would like to meet him. And there was an old man in the corner, so I thought, oh, Grandpa lives with them, so they've got other resources and things. Anyway, chatting to the mum, and she told me this awful story. He lost his sight at 10 from an infection that, you know, 1 round of antibiotics would have cured, and the infection ended up, he lost his sight. So I said, I'd like to meet him. And this little old man in the corner stood up, and somebody led him, and I was sort of, he's 18. He had sat in this hut for more than 8 years. Oh. And I had, one of my boys was the same age, and it just messed with my head, you know, and I just kept thinking, you know, like my son's making a mess and making a noise and making friends, and he's like this old man, he doesn't have a life. And so, caught up in all the emotion and everything, I said to this mum, I will help, I'll do something. I don't know what, and I'll be back. I promise I'll be back. And the friend who was with me, who was much older, was sort of, you know, what are you going to do? And I was sort of, I have no idea. And so what I did, that was the beginning of ACCB, and I ended up developing an ESL, English as a Second Language program for young blind people, because it turned out there were a lot of Kwans out there. So I developed this program over a few years. I lived and breathed it, and we ended up with ACCB, ended up supporting more than 200 families.
Oh, wow.
My program is still running in 5 districts over there. I handed all the IP over to the Vietnamese government and the Vietnamese people. It was always about them. It wasn't about me. And we had students, they were all the same. We had students that, one of them, Hom, who I'm still in touch with, she fell off a bicycle at 14 and got a stone in her eye. Yeah. And from lack of antibiotics, lack of treatment, the infection took hold, and it then went through the optical nerve and into the other eye, profound, you know, 100% blind. She had sat there for like 6 years in this little hut, and beautiful, smart, outgoing girl. And my youngest, my daughter Rose, used to come with me. We'd go back and forth every couple of months. And somebody knocked at the family home with Hom and said, there's an Australian woman and her kid that come here to help blind people. So we were known as the Australian woman and her kid.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Hom is now, she's finished university. she's graduated in social work, and she just about a month ago she got married. And she, you know, they've now got a life. They've got social networks, and they're going to uni, and we've got a few ACCV babies, and yeah. So I never ever set out to set up a charity. I do believe in, you know, contributing to the community. I always have. But that, like I said, that was a holiday. That so for 10 years, I think I went to Vietnam like 30 times or something.
Oh my goodness.
10 years. But yeah, so we have an entire program of rail ESL that we, you know, look at implementing in other developing nations.
Well, that's something to be, that's something to be very proud of. That's a legacy. We should all have a legacy that awesome.
Yeah, fine. Yes, I think my real legacy, the 6 of them.
6 of them.
Yes.
So, you know, before we wrap this up, do you have any final advice? You've got a lot of experience with disaster. You know, do you have some final advice for people that feel like they might not survive this whole COVID-19?
Look, honestly, my honest advice is you will survive it. And just keep telling yourself you will survive it. It may not be the way that you think it should look. It may not be, you know, this particular, you know, form of your business may not survive, but you will pivot, you'll dust yourself off, you'll get back up, and you'll go even stronger next time round. But you will survive it. And it will pass, you know, it really will. It's already, you know, we're already, like China and Vietnam, they've already completely come out of lockdown. We're starting the path back now. So it will pass, just hang in there and look at ways you can pivot. Chat to people, brainstorm with people, ask them how they think you can pivot. Because it's amazing, you know, somebody else's perspective can also, you know, why don't you do that? You know, you think, why didn't I think of that before? Well, so hang in there.
That's great advice. And tell everybody once again the name of your book. I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Yes, my book is 22 Leadership Fundamentals, and it's leadership for business, life, and community. And it's just full of stories of different parts of running a charity, running a family, that sort of thing. And it's there on Amazon, on Kindle. So yes, and the tagline is, the door to success says push. So push, keep pushing, hang in there. Yes.
Well, Alison, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you and learn about all your awesome trainings?
Yes, well, I have lots of freebies on my website. If that's just pushbusinesstraining.com. Okay. I can pass them on to you, Sharon, if you want to pop them in your.
Yes.
I've got a number of freebies that will help small business owners.
She has some awesome freebies, and she has some great training. And I happen to know, kind of a little birdie told me that she's going to have as a membership coming out very, you know, in the next couple of months, a very affordable membership. So you can learn from someone that truly is gifted in business. So Alison, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Sharon. Lovely to catch up with you.
Yes, well, it's nice to get to talk to you virtually again.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's lovely. And thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, and for all the folks listening in today, we would really appreciate it if you would leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. So stay safe. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye for now.
Bye.